Long before the first telephone call rang out, people yearned to overcome distance. In the early 19th century, inventors refined telegraph systems that sent pulses of current over wires, encoding messages in dots and dashes. But these devices still required trained operators at each end, translating signals into words. The dream of carrying the human voice, its tones, its warmth, over wires would drive decades of experimentation. In the 1840s, a German physicist named Johann Philipp Reis built an apparatus he called the telephone, capable of transmitting faint sounds by converting air vibrations into electrical impulses. When he spoke into a mouthpiece, a membrane at the other end vibrated and produced corresponding whistling tones. Reis's device worked in principle, but it lacked the fidelity and reliability to be practical, and his reports remained obscure to many in England and America. By the 1850s, Alexander Graham Bell was teaching elocution and experimenting with sound transmission in Boston. Fascinated by the mechanics of speech, he tinkered alongside his assistant, Thomas Watson, exploring how varying electrical currents might reproduce complex vibrations. In March 1876, in a workshop cluttered with magnets, coils, and jars of acid, Bell scraped metal filings from a diaphragm and used a needle to modulate current as the diaphragm vibrated with his voice. When he urged Watson on the other end, "Mr. Watson, come here, I want to see you," the words crackled through the line. The first intelligible telephone transmission had taken place. Bell moved quickly to patent his design, and within months formed the Bell Telephone Company. News of successful calls spread astonishingly fast. On August 10, 1876, Bell demonstrated his device at the International Exhibition in Philadelphia, charming audiences with live conversations across crowded halls. Investors saw potential not just for private communication but for connecting businesses, families, and governments. The first commercial exchange opened in New Haven, Connecticut, in January 1878, with a handful of subscribers linked by overhead wires and manual switchboards. Controversy simmered beneath this breakthrough. Elisha Gray, an inventor in Ohio, had filed a caveat for a similar patent on the very same day as Bell. Legal battles ensued, with courts ultimately siding in Bell's favor. Meanwhile, immigrants like Antonio Meucci claimed earlier experiments in New York, but lacking funds to secure a full patent, their names faded into footnotes. As the 1880s unfolded, telephone networks sprouted across cities. Operators, often women with courteous tones and nimble fingers, sat at switchboards, plugging cords to connect callers. Street poles sprouted wires like vines, and telephone booths appeared near hotels and post offices. By 1891, the first long-distance call bridged New York and Chicago, carried over loaded lines that amplified signals with repeating coils. Rural communities soon gained access through party lines, where neighbors shared a single circuit and learned to distinguish voices by ring patterns and code taps. Meanwhile, inventors refined the handset and microphone. Carbon button transmitters replaced Bell's metal diaphragms, using granules that changed resistance under varying pressure to produce louder, clearer speech. Rotary dials replaced operator service in the early 20th century, empowering users to place direct calls by spinning a numbered wheel. By mid-century, touch-tone keypads, pioneered by Bell Labs in the 1960s, sent voice frequency tones that carried numbers faster and more reliably. Underneath these user-level changes lay constant innovation in network technology: vacuum tube amplifiers, coaxial cables, microwave relays, and eventually, fiber optic lines that carried hundreds of calls at once as pulses of light. Telephone companies merged into giant regional monopolies, then splintered after antitrust rulings in the 1980s, spurring competition and the birth of mobile telephony. In 1973, Martin Cooper at Motorola made the first handheld cellular phone call on a prototype, brick, device, telling his rival at Bell Labs, "I'm calling you from a cell phone, a real handheld, portable phone." Early cellular networks rolled out in the 1980s, bulky and expensive at first, then smaller and more affordable with digital standards like GSM in the 1990s. Text messaging emerged as a quiet revolution, turning phones into personal diaries of terse notes and inside jokes. By the early 2000s, wireless data services transformed the telephone into a multifunctional pocket computer. Smartphones combine voice, text, email, web browsing, cameras, and apps, rendering the original landline almost quaint. Yet even today, when a caller's greeting emerges crisply on a handset or earbuds, the century and a half of invention, from Reese's listening discs to Bell's first words to Watson, from switchboards to silicon chips, remains at our fingertips. The telephone's story is one of relentless curiosity, fierce competition, and a simple human need to be heard, across any distance, as if we stood side by side.